So now I'm thrilled to introduce today's speaker, Paul Shrivastava. Paul is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Penn State, the Director of the Sustainability Institute, and a Professor of Management. Prior to this, he was the Executive Director of Future Earth, a UN-supported sustainability research network. He served as the David O'Brien Distinguished Professor of Sustainable Enterprise at Concordia University in Montreal. He leads the International Chair for Arts and Sustainable Enterprise at ICN Business School, in Nancy, France, and founded several private companies and nonprofit organizations. He received his Ph.D. Are you serious? I didn't know that. He received his Ph.D. from the University of Pittsburgh. Look, I've known Paul for a couple of years now. You can't even tell. It's worn off. So, he is a tenured associate professor of management at NYU, a Fulbright senior scholar at Kyoto University, and the Howard I. Scott Chair in Management at Bucknell University. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome today's Huddle expert, Paul Shrivastava.
Good morning. I was trying to keep this a secret, but it's already out. Yep, I regret it. I joined in 1978. I don't know any of you who saw that game, Pittsburgh versus Penn State in 1978. That was the first year I had arrived in the US in August, and the game was played in November. And Pittsburgh was leading, I think 14-something, and then by the end of the game, Penn State won. So I became a Penn State fan very early. But thank you very much to the Alumni Association, Paul and his team, to the athletics department for organizing this event, and especially thank you for inviting me to share some of the work that we do at the Sustainability Institute. It's a well-kept secret. We are parked, safely tucked away in the suburbs in a building behind the Beaver Stadium. So nobody hears of us unless we are invited, so we appreciate it. And I want to thank all of you for being here on a Saturday, on a game day, and at 9 a.m., most of this town is getting ready for its first drink. And you guys are coming here to listen to me about the Anthropocene. Well, thank you very much. If there's one thing you want to take away from this talk, it's the meaning of this term Anthropocene. And just by raise of hands, how many have heard that word before? Very good, okay, that's great. At least there are some people, so it's not new. So what I'm going to do is do the talk in two parts. One is start talking about why sustainability and why now. What is happening in the world at large that we need to think about sustainability, and why this fuss that Penn State is making about sustainability, that it has hired me as the Chief Sustainability Officer, the only Chief Sustainability Officer in a top 10, a Big Ten university. So why is Penn State giving it so much attention? And we all need to understand that well, because it's important not only for us, but for our children and our grandchildren. And then second thing I want to do is to sort of say, where does Penn State stand and where does Pennsylvania stand in terms of sustainability? How well are we doing? And that will give you a reason why we need to be doing more. And I'll explain a little bit about how we are institutionalizing sustainability at Penn State. So we are going to... Okay, so the focus here is on long-term sustainability of the planet Earth. When I say sustainability, I'm not talking about something that's happening locally in Penn State alone or in University Park, but globally we are at a different point in history. And I want to take you through a little bit of history in my next couple of slides to show you exactly what the disjuncture, what the discontinuity is. And in that context, we can talk about this multifaceted challenge of sustainability and what the world has come to agree as a solution for it. and then we'll talk about what Penn State is doing. So I'll present 3 studies because I've been a professor for so long, I can't do a talk without presenting some studies. This one came out from a group of scholars in Scotland. It's called The Great Acceleration. And it traces the history of the world from 1750 to 2010. And it traces the history in terms of scientifically measurable variables. On the left-hand side, you see what are called socioeconomic trends. Can you all read that? I'll read it out to you. So the first one is world population. The second one is real GDP. This is foreign direct investment, urban population, primary energy use, fertilizer use, paper production, water, large dams, transportation, telecommunication. And on this end of all these graphs is 1750 going up to 2010. So that's the period. And don't get worried about the data because there's only one lesson from all of these graphs, but I just want to tell you what the graphs are. So on the left-hand side, you have the socioeconomic data. On the right-hand side, you have Earth system variables. So Earth system variables are characterized by carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, nitrogen or nitrous oxide, methane, surface temperature of the Earth, stratospheric ozone, ocean acidification, shrimp aquaculture, marine capture, tropical forests, domesticated land, etc. And I've just picked out a sample of variables. The study actually measures a lot more variables. And what the study shows is that sometime around the 1950s, this is the point of inflection in all these curves. It's happening something around 1950s. Until then, the world is sort of progressing at a particular rate. And then in 1950s, everything moves up exponentially. There are good reasons for it. The wars ended, population started accumulating, a lot more technology came in, a lot more products came in, a lot more consumption started happening. So both the socioeconomic trends and the Earth system consequences of those trends have increased dramatically. So this period after 1950 is called the Great Acceleration of humankind and its impact on the Earth. So this is one fundamental fact, a scientific fact that has been well established by a number of studies, and this is one of the culminating studies. A second study I want to take you to is a study called the planetary boundaries. So how much has this acceleration, what kind of cumulative impact has it had? So scientists have been studying 9 boundaries of life, beyond which the system that has been stable for over 1 million years starts destabilizing. And what they're trying to determine is where are we with regard to these boundaries after this accumulation in the 21st century. These boundaries are coded as beyond, red is beyond the zone of uncertainty, high risk. Yellow is in the zone of uncertainty, increasing risk. Green is below boundary, and the white is boundary is not yet quantified. So if you look at the boundaries that are being tracked, on 2 boundaries, biosphere integrity, which is genetic diversity, and biogeochemical flows, which is nitrogen and phosphorus, we are already in the red zone. People talk about climate change, but even more than climate change is the change of the biogeochemistry of the Earth. We are fundamentally transforming what is happening in the streams, in the oceans, on land. We're taking over land and churning it over in gigatons every year. Somebody told me once that in our entire history of humankind, there are hundreds of Earth, and they move Earth materials as debris down the river. And in the entire history, the total amount of Earth movement is less than what we move today in a single year. Because we do agriculture, we move land. When we build cities, we move land. And we are basically changing land every single day. So this is a very interesting time now. So you've got two of the boundaries where we are in the red zone, two boundaries, climate and earth systems, are in the yellow zone, and some of them, the blue ones, are not yet quantified. The others are in the safe zone. But think about the safe zone for fresh water. I mean, what we're even thinking about safe zone, every day you have news items about how water is stressed. The World Economic Forum, in its last 3 annual reports in Davos, has identified water as the biggest risk to business. Shortage of water, pollution of water. So we are clearly, cumulatively now at a point in history where we need to change things fundamentally. And that brings us to this third study called the Anthropocene. And the term Anthropocene simply means period. So we have had Holocene, we have had all the other Jurassic periods before this, but Anthropocene refers to a period in which humans, this is the era of the humans. Humans have become the biggest force of nature. All natural cycles today, the hydrological cycle, the carbon cycle, the phosphorus cycle, the nitrous cycle, all those cycles are more affected by what humans do than by natural processes. Take that in, because this is really profound. Our role has shifted. We are not now trying to live in a world where we are sort of battling nature and living against an oppressive set of natural elements. We are the oppressive natural element. And that puts a special responsibility on how we live our lives and how we transmit this earth to the next generation. And this is the reason why sustainability has become so important. There is a scientific consensus that we need to change things. We need to change our economy. We need to change our educational system. We need to change the way we live, the way we entertain ourselves, the way we move, the way we fly around the world. All of that has to change. The good news is that there are solutions and there are ways of moving forward. So I'm going to talk about this one solution called sustainability, because 192 nations came together in 2015 and agreed that this is the direction in which the world needs to move in order to remain sustainable. They are encapsulated in 17 goals. And I'll very quickly flip through those goals to show you what they are, because they're not all about the environment. Actually, only 6 of the 17 goals are about the environment. The remaining 11 are about economics, about jobs, about health, about gender equality, etc. So we'll take a few minutes to look at what has the world agreed to. And when I say the world has agreed to, I mean 192 presidents or prime ministers, plus over 10,000 CEOs of major corporations, plus about 3,000 universities across the world have signed on to these Sustainable Development Goals. And these are the development goals that we at Penn State are adopting as a framework, sustainability of Penn State and Pennsylvania. So what are these goals? I think I have a slide where each of the goals is written out a little bit, so I'm going to go through. Goal number 1 is end poverty in all forms everywhere. Goal number 2 is end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Goal number 3 is ensure healthy lives and promote well-being of all for all ages. Goal number 4 is ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning. Goal number 5 is achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Goal number 6 is ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation. 7 is about ensuring access to affordable, reliable, clean, sustainable energy. Goal number 8 is promoting sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full productive employment. Goal number 9 is building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation. Goal number 10 is reducing inequality within and among countries and within and among people. 11 is making cities and human settlements inclusive. 12 is ensuring sustainable consumption and production. 13 is about urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And I'm going to come back to this goal number 13 in a minute because this is a goal that we are focusing on for the next 2 years to get things ramped up. Goal number 14 is conserving sustainable use of the ocean, seas, marine resources. 15 is about protecting sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. 16 is about peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, justice for all, effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions. And 17 is about strengthening the means of implementation through partnerships and collaborations. So clearly, these goals are comprehensive. They're all inclusive. They're not just about being a tree hugger and doing well by the environment. They balance environmental capacity to deliver ecological services with human needs to consume. But it is very apparent from the prior slides that we cannot continue to do consumption for 10 billion people who will be on Earth by 2050 at the rate and in the way we have been doing, because that process has been shown to be unsustainable. There is tremendous amount of inequality on Earth. We hear about the inequality between nations, but the inequality in terms of wealth today, 1%, actually it's not even 1%, 26 individuals today control 50% wealth as much as the bottom 50% of the world. So there's a huge amount of inequality, and about 2.2 billion people are still living in poverty, multidimensional poverty. And if we just that we'll keep on producing more and more till everybody becomes rich, well, that's not going to be possible because we are already at the planetary boundaries for 2 of the 9 variables and probably will exceed boundaries for the others if we just continue to grow without being mindful of how we are growing. So we have a challenge. These goals are not all consistent and coherent, although I've described them as 17 different goals. They are really one integrated set of goals. And we need to realize that there are internal contradictions and conflicts among these goals. So we need to be ready to make trade-offs. We need to be ready to also see synergies, that when you do well by one goal, sometimes you get benefits on another goal. So think about it as a complex system of actions that the world has now agreed to is the direction in which we are all going to move. And certainly Penn State is behind this notion. So how exactly is Pennsylvania doing? So I started with this big global concept to show you that individual places cannot become sustainable. It's a fallacy to think that we can make State College sustainable whether everybody surrounding us is poor and not sustainable. Because the environment doesn't stop at borders. To give you a concrete example, we are doing some work in Colorado where the ski season is getting shorter and shorter. And every day that you lose of the ski season, you lose about $6-7 million worth of revenues. And the reason it is getting shorter is there's more coal particulate matter that is raining on the snow-covered peaks. So it melts the snow faster. This coal is coming all the way from China. Chinese power plants are using coal to a large degree, and particulate matter rises up, mixes up with the clouds travel all over the world, and eventually some of them rain in Colorado. And the reason I give you this example is to point out the tight interconnectivity that we cannot manage individual places. We now need to manage the planet Earth. And somebody has to take leadership. If everybody just looks down and focuses on their own little piece, then we're not going to achieve sustainability. So we begin at the global level, but we also need to act locally because we have more control over local matters. So here in Penn State, when I arrived here 2 years ago, and I was talking to some of the senior administrators and I asked them, what are you all doing in terms of sustainability? And everybody said, oh, we're doing a lot of stuff. We're doing recycling, we're doing food waste management, we are doing landscape and planting trees and so on. And that's all good, it is all important. And much of it was happening because there were individuals who were passionate about it. What we are changing now is we are making this systemic. We are institutionalizing it in all parts of Penn State because we don't believe that if you do it in one part, you're going to succeed. You might solve one problem, but you create another problem. So I'll give you a couple of slides on when we started this work. We said, let's at least assess where is Pennsylvania on sustainability and where is Penn State on sustainability. Well, this table is from a study that shows on each of the 17 goals, how is each of the 50 states performing? And is it likely to achieve that goal by 2030? That was the question being assessed. And on the vertical side, you have all the states. You probably can't read. I'll read them out to you. And here you have the goals, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 16 goals. Green color means good chance that you will achieve that goal. Red, on the other hand, means you have no chance that you're going to make it by 2030 because your numbers are not right. And yellow and brown are in between. Pennsylvania ranks 30 out of 50 states. We don't have a single green in our column. Think if this was the Penn State team, how much trouble we would be in. The one area in which everybody seems to have, a lot of people have greens, goal number 6. Goal number 6 is about clean water and sanitation for all. We are not even green in water. And think about this, we are surplus in water. In the last 10 years, we have had 8% more precipitation. In the next 10 years, we are going to have 10% more precipitation. We are going to be even more surplus in water, and we're not going to meet the clean water goal. So our state is deeply challenged. We are trying to bring some of this data to the attention of our own secretaries of DCNR and DEP and DCED and others with whom we work, our own different colleges. But we are nowhere close to being sustainable. We have a lot of work to do. And the thing that I find surprising is that most of us are not aware of the challenges. So for example, goal number 1 about hunger, when I came over here and I started talking about these goals and people were saying, why are you talking to us about hunger? Hunger is like a third world problem. It's a poor country problem. Well, we said we'll go and check out. So we surveyed students, and guess what? We have food insecurity among our own students. So we opened lion pantries, we opened them here and on campuses, and we kept on studying the phenomenon. And guess who comes to the lion pantries? Is it only students? No. We have staff. We have the community members. It's just that we choose not to see the problem even when we are sitting in the middle of it. So one of the jobs of the Sustainability Institute is to just quantify and show people what is happening with regard to each of these goals, and then develop programs to address them. Now, clearly, we are a small shop. We've got about a dozen people working at the Institute. We can't do this all by ourselves. We need alumni, we need the colleges and the campuses and the students and the communities to participate. But we've adopted this big framework as an approach that we can bring everybody together, whether they are food experts or nutrition experts or hunger experts or engineers. We have all the expertise in this university. And that is why we have adopted this very broad, encompassing framework to go forward. So let me also show you how we at Penn State are doing on sustainability. So there is an Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. It's a body that has some 800 universities that are members, and they run a report, a rating system called STARS, Sustainability Tracking and Reporting System. And they ask every university to measure 69 different metrics from the university, and then every 3 years you present the data, and then they give us sort of feedback, and I'm going to share a couple of slides from there to show you where we stand on these 69 metrics that this association measures. They are the people who feed all the basic data. When you see the greenest schools in Princeton Review or sustainable scoring, this is the database that all of that comes from. So on the one hand, we scored reasonably well. When we did it in 2011, we scored 58.8 points. You can score a maximum of 100 points. So we were not too bad. It was what was considered to be in the silver category. In 2014, we scored 66.7 points. And then in 2017, we went up a little bit to 67, which puts us in the gold category. But we are far away from being fully sustainable. There are a lot of universities that are in gold and platinum categories. So we have a lot of work to do. This is a little bit more breakdown of where the opportunities for improvement are. So you have academics over here, you have engagement over here, you have operations and planning and administration. And green is 2014 points, and blue is 2017 points. So you can see in academics, there is a lot of empty space there, and in operations, there's a lot of empty space, although we have made a little bit of improvement over here. We can virtually do better in every way. So the way we are imagining sustainability to happen in Penn State now is we want to see it as a fundamental function of the university. Just like, let's say, budgeting. Everybody has to do budgeting. It's fundamental. You can't move forward in a year without doing this. A unit has to put in the discipline, come up with the numbers, say what they're going to spend, why they're going to spend it. So we want to make people think about sustainability in the same way as they think about a basic function like budgeting. Now, how do you get this to happen, actually? Well, we have 13 colleges, and we have 24 campuses, each of which is a budgetary unit. And in addition, we have 28 other budget units. So like athletics, medical system, hospitality, Penn State or hotel, these are like budgetary units. So when we came here and we saw we've got a dozen people at the institute, and we've got a humongous ship called Penn State that we need to turn, how are we going to do this? Clearly, we can't go to all of these places and create sustainability programs for everybody. And for a moment, I also want you to consider how big we are, because you all are so steeped into Penn State that you don't often contemplate the size and the scale of this institution. We have a budget this year of $6.4 billion. You know how much that is? That is more than the GDP of 40 countries. So if we were a country, there would be 40 countries smaller than us in terms of budget. If we were a corporation, we would be bigger than Yahoo. We would be bigger than Harley Davidson. We are a big operation in 23 different locations around the state. We have upwards of 1,000 buildings. We manage millions of square feet of carpeting, and we do construction in the range of 300 to 400 million a year. So this is a big system, and I'm quite convinced that no single person, no single department can pull this off with a strength of 12 people. If we had 250 people like the budget unit has, maybe, but with 12 people. So the model we have adopted is we are telling all these budget units that if you think sustainability is important and you want to show leadership in it, you partner with us, but you own sustainability of your unit. And you develop sustainability programs internally within the unit, we will help you. We will even bring resources to you. So, owning sustainability means a couple of things. We give them 3 C's to think about: champion, charter, and council. Champion means you have to actually appoint a person who is designated as in charge, the sustainability champion for that unit. Could be a half-time person to begin with if you don't have the resources. We contribute to hiring such a person or designating such a person, but you need to have a person. A council means you need to expand participation to multiple people in the unit. One person won't be able to convert the whole unit. So get faculty, get staff, get students, get alumni, get stakeholders involved in creating a council that will be a guide for that unit. People who understand the unit's needs and its assets and be able to provide good guidance. And charter means a set of principles or guidelines that you can use to develop sustainability programs. So when I arrived over here, there was one college that was kind of going down this path. They had appointed a sustainability champion, and that college is the College of Business. And they had taken one of our employees from the Sustainability Institute, and they were doing very well. So we thought this model could work within Penn State. And we were hoping that maybe 2 deans or 3 deans would agree with us and say, okay, we will put in the resources to make this happen. And maybe 1 or 2 chancellors will agree with us. And then over 5 or 6 years, have it adopted by the whole university. So we'd have like complete penetration. Well, in the very first year, we got 8 deans saying they want to move in this direction, which is really very encouraging. We ran out of our budget to hire champions within the first 3 months. And in addition, there were 5 campuses that said, we want to be leaders in sustainability, we will put in the resources, and let's do it. So here you have a list of the colleges: Smeal, College of Engineering, College of Arts and Architecture, Health and Human Development, Nursing, College of Medicine, College of Liberal Arts, and the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences, who have now made this commitment. They've got a person in charge internally. They've got a council that is being formed or already formed. They're starting to think about charters. We are sharing with them some documents of prior charters, both internal and external. So this is starting to happen. Among the campuses, Altoona, Barron, Brandywine, Monalto, New Kensington are moving in this direction. So this is good progress in my view. I think as we move forward, we will have this community of people that would be distributed across the university. But we know that everything that happens in a university doesn't happen only in the colleges and campuses. There is a whole other support system. There is strategic planning. There is auditing. There is budgeting, there is human resources, there is a risk council, there are all these other administrative units with whom we are also in conversation to make sure that their unit, whether it's athletics, whether it's the Alumni Association, we are in conversation with all these other units to see how we can insert sustainability into their agenda so that next year, when they come up with their next strategic plan, that there will be a big footprint for sustainability in their own strategic plans. And I think that's how you get the institution to move forward together. We are hoping that the next cycle of strategic planning, which all of you know is going to start next year. This year is sort of the year of tweaking and evaluation. So we are hoping to really make this real within units and then push deeper to engage all the other colleges and campuses. Another thing I want to point out is as part of this sustainability agenda, we believe that sustainability doesn't happen only in the classroom. Sustainability happens in the real world. Universities like ours are what are called R1 or Research 1 universities. We are very, very strong on things that are in the mind. But we want to do sustainability on not just in people's minds, but in the way they behave and in operations. So we have developed this, we haven't developed, but we are kind of picking up something that already was happening here called the Living Lab. This is parts of our operations and operations of our communities in which we go and do research and teaching about sustainability to make changes. And I want to give you a concrete example because just last Friday, Governor Tom Wolf inaugurated or did the ground laying ceremony for a 70 megawatt solar power plant. I don't know how many of you saw news items around it. But this has been a project that has been going on at our institute and within OPP for the last 12 to 16 months. We have been trying to decarbonize our own energy use. We are a big energy user in all our campuses. And so we've gone and done a power purchase agreement with a company called Lightsource BP, in which they make all the investment up front, about $75 million, and we agree to buy all the electricity from that solar power plant for the next 25 years at a rate cheaper than what we are currently paying. So net, it is an economically justifiable decision for us. We are going to save $250,000 in the first year and $12 million over the life of the contract in purchasing that energy, and 25% of our energy is going to become decarbonized. And this decarbonization is very, very serious challenge. The goal number 13 that I had mentioned earlier, climate change, much of climate change is happening because of excess carbon into the atmosphere. And the consensus of climate science is that every organization will ultimately need to go to zero carbon. We will need to create a low carbon economy. And so this is our first step towards that. Now, what we have done that is smart in that contract is that we are not just saying that this company needs to produce solar power. We have put conditions on the use of the land so that the land can still be productive with ecological services. So we have the rights to plant certain types of plants, pollinator plants or other types of plants that manage water flows and storm water in the area. This is 100 acres of land, so it's not a trivial amount of land. But we did a partnership with Nature Conservancy to put into place requirements for sound and ecologically correct land use management. And we also put conditions in the contract for what we call economic inclusiveness, which means the benefits of this program should also go to the local community. And this kind of a power purchase agreement is now become reality with the groundbreaking. The governor and the various secretaries were there. And we are getting requests virtually every week from other colleges, hospital systems, prisons, schools, councils of government to help create this kind of contracts for them. So we are going to not only be doing this kind of work within Penn State, but we are also going to collaborate with towns and cities where our campuses are located, but also with other areas, whoever needs help, because we have the knowledge now on how to do this right. Okay, let's see. So in terms of our focus now for the next couple of years, we are building partnerships and relationships with others who want to do this as per goal number 17. There are two partnerships I mentioned over here. One is the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, which is a global partner. Because not only do we have all these assets in 23 locations here, we also have on-the-ground people in over 200 different places in the world. In Africa, in South America, in South Asia, in China. So we want to influence global sustainability by using those assets that are located abroad. So we've got this global partnership with Sustainable SDSN and a local partnership with something called PERC, P-E-R-C, Pennsylvania Environmental Resources Consortium. It's a group of 30 colleges in Pennsylvania who want to move forward with environmental programs. So we are working with them to share best practices, to share resources, and make sure that as a state, as a Commonwealth, we move together. And we hope to develop partnerships with the Alumni Association. We are working with Paul's office, and we're also working with the athletics department. With the athletics department, we have some really interesting opportunities. So those of you who are football fans, I'll just mention one of them. The environmental director of the NFL is a gentleman by the name of Jack Groh. Jack and Susan Groh manage the environmental programs for all the Super Bowls, all the recruitment games, etc. So a year and a half ago, we invited them here, and they are helping us to, Super Bowl is 97% waste-free. It's redirected. It doesn't go to the landfill. And they've honed the process on how to make a game waste-free. So they are bringing to us that knowledge. They are taking our students as interns and volunteers into games. We have now sent over 50 students over the last 2 games, and we are deepening that relationship, and they have the ambition of building with us the first sustainable sporting events program. So we are lining up the academic side of the house, the athletic side of the house, the OPP side of the house to try to create a program that would be in the sports arena and use the best practices from the NFL. The other big thing we are doing is climate action conversation. You all, those who are watching the news, know how big this topic has become. And we at Penn State are very big in terms of the research on climate change. In fact, we are the university that has the most authors of the IPCC reports. No other university has as many authors that we have, which means we have the experts in-house. But this knowledge is not translating as well into courses and into actual practical solutions. So we are working this year with our OPP, combining it with our own research. We're kind of turning our research on ourselves. Rather than do research and publish it and throw it out there for whoever to pick up, we are being much more intentional now. We are saying we know the solution. We know the solar PPA. We created the solution. Let's do more of those. Why only 25% of our electricity? Why not 50%? Why not 75%? So we are pushing the institution in that direction. Okay, I'm going to sort of bring this to a close here. Let me see. Yeah. We are working in partnership, as I mentioned, and these partnerships extend beyond these big associations and international and national networks to also include companies. So companies like Lightsource BP, which did the solar power plant, or Pepsi, which is one of our big suppliers, or the carpet manufacturer Interface, which makes fully recyclable carpets. So we've identified in our supply chain those companies with whom we spend a lot of money, our top 100 spends. And from that, we are picking the ones that are leaders in green supply chain, in green products, in recyclable products. And we are working with them to green our own supply chain, to create a system in which we buy the right products to begin with. So there are more resources being put into it, A couple of new people are going to be hired, one in the purchasing side, one in the recycling and waste management side. This is a recommendation that just came out from a task force that we had set up last year on waste management. So in summary, we kind of throwing this stuff at every part of the university, hoping it'll stick in enough places that over time there will be a momentum and we will all move towards achieving sustainable development goals. We see a role for the alumni. I was very surprised to read just last week in a letter by President Eric Barron that out of every 106 college degree holders in the United States, one is from Penn State. So we know the power of this alumni association. And we also think that the alumni are in a particular position of responsibility. Many of us, and let me just say this, I'm really happy to see so many people with less hair than me, because being in a university, that's very rarely the case. But we are in a place where we are thinking about our own legacy. And we want to leave behind a legacy for future generations, for our children and grandchildren, that will make the world a more livable place than we found it. So I think of alumni as a great ally to the world of sustainability. And we are working with Paul's office to try to see which of our alumni are working in the sustainability space or are involved in community efforts in the sustainability space. So we are creating what we call an affiliate program. So we're going to identify them, invite them to join this affiliate program, have conversations with us about what they think should be done at a university like this, and how we can take our collective agenda forward. So I'll stop over here. We still have a few minutes. If there are questions, I'd be happy to answer them now, or you're welcome to send me an email. And I think my email is, my email is just Paul. paul@psu.edu. That's easy. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
At the beginning, you had a slide that said 10 billion people in 2050. My concern is, what if that's 11, and what happens when it's 12 and 13 and 14, and what are we doing about that?
Yeah.
Because without that, all these other things, I think, are in jeopardy.
Yeah, good point. I mean, the 10 billion is a consensus number from some population studies, but the range that I have seen goes from 3 billion to 14 billion. So we can be off on either direction. There could be a catastrophic event that wipes out a whole bunch of people. You just have to look at Dorian and imagine a few more Dorians in different locations, which is likely could happen. So yeah, we need to have a planning system that is sensitive to these mega changes, and there's no way to predict what the actual population is going to be. But the 10 billion number that I've been using is based on a consensus within the IPCC and IPBES, which is the Intergovernmental Panel for Biodiversity, etc.
But I would think one of those 17, maybe you need 18, which is population control.
Well, many of them address population indirectly. So you saw goal number 6, I think, on gender equality and education of girls and women. The primary reason why that goal is there is because there is good research to show that the more women can have education to control their fertility, the more, that is the only effective way of controlling fertility, in fact, globally speaking. So there are provisions in many of the goals. So I gave you the goals at the grossest level. Each of the goals is then broken up into 3 or 4 indicators. And then each of the indicators is broken up into 3 or 4 targets. So things like population pop up in probably 7 or 8 of the goals. Because you're absolutely right. The base of that great acceleration that I showed is population. There's a...
Is this agreement, the 2015 agreement you're talking about, the Paris Agreement, which our Republican administration is pulled out of?
So there were two agreements in 2015. There was a Sustainable Development Goals Agreement, and then there was the Paris Climate Accord. And both of them have sort of worked with each other, but you're right, it's the same agreement out of which the current administration has withdrawn from. And although Penn State, the president of Penn State has signed a commitment called We Are Still In. So we are still in the Paris Agreement as an institution, although we are not in it as a nation.
A living lab that you might consider. My wife says louder. A living lab that you might consider on the Penn State campus for almost 65 years is a nuclear research reactor operating, doing much of its research related to nuclear power, the only type of power generating electricity that does not issue greenhouse gases, if that is your concern. Now that might not be politically correct to address, but it is an important living lab, long-standing, still doing good work.
Yeah. So we are aware of the nuclear opportunities. In fact, the College of Engineering is making big new investments in nuclear, but they are not in the kind of technology that that particular power plant reflects. Nuclear technology, that plant is one of the first plants 50, 60 years ago. Current nuclear technology involving micro nuclear plants that can be put on a ship or can be put in a campus and has much less waste. So yes, nuclear doesn't produce carbon, but it produces other stuff that also needs to be managed and is dangerous. So the overall judgment of the engineering school is that we need to make more investments into it, both from a power standpoint, but also from a security standpoint. We need a lot more nuclear experts to manage the aggressive nuclear expansion in other countries. So we need to build safety systems, we need to build tracking systems, we need to build the cyber security around nuclear. So there is a lot big investment going on at Penn State in nuclear. In fact, it is many times bigger than we are putting into renewable energy, which in my view is not necessarily the right way to go, but nuclear is very popular here.
You'll get an email from me.
Okay. There's a hand up here.
Oh. Morning. I just wanted to see what you thought as individuals, like we could have the greatest impact on, recycling, composting. Wanted to get your ideas for what we can do individually.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is so important because when we talk about institutional responsibility, it gives people the impression like Penn State can do everything and we just sit back and continue our lives comfortably. But you're absolutely right. We need to take personal responsibility. I think virtually in everything that we do, we can do it differently. So I often begin by looking at my own carbon output. There are calculators available online now where you can just punch in numbers about your life practices and they'll tell you how much carbon you're using. So when I was executive many years ago in India, my carbon was 2 tons of carbon for my lifestyle. From there I came to the University of Pittsburgh as a doctoral student and my carbon moved from 2 tons to 20 tons because I went from a place that had no air conditioning, not even running water or electricity, to a place which had all these systems. So our personal footprint is a combination of some personal things we do and some things in the system that we live in. So in terms of personal things that we can change, I think food is probably the biggest one. Einstein, I think, said that we could solve the world's global climate problems if we all became vegetarian. I know that is not a feasible solution for most people. But even if we went to reducing our red meat consumption by 5% or 10%, we would be making a big dent. So all types of food, I don't want to pick on just meat, but many of the processed foods that we use today, they contain 14 to 20 times more energy than the nutritional value of the food. And when we waste this food, we are not only wasting raw materials and food products, we are wasting energy. When 35% of the food produced in this country is wasted today. So doing something about the food, which is under our control, we can buy the right foods, eat the right foods, and incidentally, non-processed foods are also healthier for you. So that's one big thing. Second big thing that we can do, I think, is in movement and transportation. That is often the second largest carbon footprint for most people. We fly around the world. The last job that I had, I was in the air for 200 nights. That was a particularly bad job because I was running a global organization. But even if you're a professor at Penn State, you are making international trips, you're traveling, and all of that is carbon intensive. And you can measure everything today. So being more mindful about how much do you need to travel. And if you're traveling a mile or less, do you really have to take the car? Could you be walking? Could you be biking? So we are trying to create here at Penn State an alternative transportation system that includes SCADA buses, that includes car sharing, that includes Zagster bicycle, and encouraging people to walk. So I think movement is another big thing that people can change their patterns around. A third thing people can do is, and this is a little bit more difficult, is where they live. We know that suburban living is probably the most carbon intensive because your workplace is separated from your living place. So you have to both move yourself and you have to move materials, your food and everything into your house. So you're working within a system that is automatically, systemically high carbon. So moving from that to, let's say, a small community in which there are multiple people living together. Could be an apartment building, could be Foxdale, there are some Foxdale people over here. I mean, that kind of living, collective living, is lower in its footprint. And if you have an opportunity to think about what you want to do in your next abode, that would be a good time to reduce some of your carbon footprint. Okay.
Could you tell us something about the Drawdown conference that's going to be held here next week?
Yes. So Drawdown is an organization that believes that it is not sufficient to just reduce carbon. They feel that the world is at a place where we need to actually draw down the existing carbon that's in the atmosphere. So they have developed a series of 80 technologies and social practices, and we are partnering with Drawdown, the organization, to do the first science conference. And the title of the conference is From Research to Action. So it's about how to utilize these 80 technologies in your community, in your neighborhood, in your household, to reduce or draw down the carbon from the atmosphere. I would encourage those of you who can, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at the Penn Stater Hotel. It's a sold-out conference now, so you can't actually get into the conference, but it is being webcast for free. So you could just go to the Drawdown website and listen to the talks there. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you very much.